So the last time you were here, we talked about continuous line drawings, and then we took a look at Jim Dine's paintbrushes. If you remember the photograph of Jim Dine's work, he had these beautiful paintbrushes that had been very meticulously painted using a continuous line. On your paper at this point, you should have a line or a grouping of paintbrushes somewhere on your page that have been drawn with Sharpie and are ready for some color. Okay, so today we're going to add some color, but just like Jim Dine's picture is really messy and the color is very splashed on like you would expect if you were working with messy paintbrushes, we're going to do some watercolor technique a little bit differently to create that splatter effect. So let's start by getting our brush wet, because if you remember from previous years, you have to have water to paint with watercolor. Your watercolor sets look like this, and you are sharing them with the person next to you or people next to you. And it is totally up to you what colors you use today, but there are going to be a few ways that you can use the colors. So the first way, you can simply add some color by painting onto or around, just creating some color for your brushes in that fashion. Okay. The other option is to do what we call a splatter effect. So remember, it is really important not to mix the colors. So between colors, make sure you push the brush all the way to the bottom of the mixing or the water bowl, and then wipe it to make an X on the sponge. So that not only gets all of the water to clean the brush, but it gets any excess water off the brush. Okay, then I'm ready for a new color. I'm going to try some red here. And to create a splatter effect, move the paint out of the way, and you're simply going to hold your brush like so and just pull it back to create some splatters. Now this gets messy, guys, so do it carefully. You probably want to stand up as you work, and I'm going to go ahead and rinse it, wipe, and let's move on. I'm going to add a little more just lines of color. It is okay to mix your colors somewhat on the page as you choose. If you notice, the purple, since it's still wet, is kind of blending with my paint, my blue down here. Oops, sorry, I didn't realize you couldn't see that. So my purple and blue are kind of mixing together. That's called wet on wet, when you paint wet paint on top of where you already had some wet paint. Okay. And then once again, dip it all the way in the water to really scrub on the bottom and rinse it off. Wipe. And then let's go for, I like this lime green or this yellow green you've got here. And splatter effect. Just decorating to really create that painterly look to my picture. The one thing I'm going to say is do not overdo it. As much as we want color in our work, I do not want to completely cover up that beautiful continuous line that you made. The other option that you have, if you have looked at your work and decided maybe you didn't draw a shadow but you would like one, you do have the option to add one in with paint. So we would then use a black and very carefully you can paint in some shadows to your work. Ooh, and this is not totally black, is it? I would not recommend painting in a shadow unless you are fairly confident with your ability to paint. The other option is to draw a shadow in if you really want a shadow before you start painting. All right, guys, remember the key is not to do too much where you now can't see your brushes, and get to painting.